I'm the True Wise Gamer, giving off my vast knowledge so you may understand games a bit better. A while back, one person actually requested me that I play the game, El Shaddai. However, I didn't like it when I originally played it and I just scrapped it. However, I always thought I was too mean on the game when I originally played it. I really wasn't, but it was way more interesting than I was giving it credit for.
By no means does that make it good, but it did make me want to review it since, well, I looked around and a lot of reviews give it too much praise. Not to say it's bad or anything, but I feel like its problem gets overlooked so much that it's unfair to the game when it has legit problems that cannot be ignored, and possibly should have been improved on with the remaster. So let's talk about the game a bit, since I feel it's not well known enough, so talking about its history won't retread too much ground. This game is based on the Book of Enoch, which is an apocryphal book or non-canonical story of the Bible that was taken out due to its... I'm not entirely sure. Some say it's because it wasn't divinely inspired, which I don't get. How does one determine that? But whatever. Who can really tell anyway? They chose this book because, well, they thought it would be an interesting idea to touch on, which I really can't argue with. Christian mythology is actually quite very intricate and very interesting. The game was headed up by a guy named Sawaki Takayasu, who was the artist behind the first Devil May Cry game and also Okami. And it really shows because holy moly, this game is beautiful. Like, if anyone ever told you this game looked bad, well, except the humans, because there is no argument with me on this, they look just terrible. Otherwise, I would just tell them this.
Heresy! Destroy it!
Yes, I did use that clip. Also, just seriously, look at this. This game just looks so damn good. I really want the art book. However, the game did suffer from financial issues from behind the scenes, which I'll deal with more at the end. Well, it did well enough. It didn't really help the financial situation with the company, which, well, died. And was pretty much considered dead until Sawaki himself actually bought the rights to the series and actually helped make a semi-sequel. And, well, semi-sequel is kind of like, it's complicated. I'll get to that when I get to that, called The Lost Child. And a little while ago, the HD remaster for the game, which I don't know how that works because I don't know how you make this game look any better, but hey, if they can do it, go right ahead. So when I heard they were putting it on Steam, I thought I would buy it to show support. And here we are.
And with that little side out, let's actually talk about El Shaddai, Ascension of the Metatron.
The game begins with our main character, Enoch, jumping down from a hand in armor as he fights Azazel and gets his ass thoroughly kicked. The game then resets as we redo the intro with Enoch writing stuff, as we also meet Lucifer. Huh. Never heard of this guy before. Anyway, he tells Enoch that God's got a job for him that is to defeat the 7 fallen angels called the Grigori, which is actually different from the actual 200 fallen angels that were, originally there. Anyway, Enoch then drops down to Earth again to finally begin his journey, which takes around 365 years to actually find the tower where the fallen angels are at, which is actually kind of bizarre since he actually only lived that long and, well, the final year was when he was taken. Yeah, the Bible and understanding human lifespan is something it never did. Anyway, after getting close to the tower, he meets Azazel again and gets owned again. Yeah, just get used to this until around the end, because they do this so damn often. Like, at some point, they should have known that this was just getting bad. But anyway, after this, his journey properly begins. Most people would think that each Grigori would be its own section for the tower, and would be like a boss for the floor, etc, with different gimmicks, but also different themes in dealing with the story. Well, sorry to disappoint, but the game plot kinda stops here. By that I mean, the best way to describe it is that it stops making sense anywhere around here.
Yeah, let me elaborate on this. Enoch never really talked. Well, he does at the beginning and every time he gets back up. Other than that, he doesn't ever talk.
It's really bizarre because the story also wants to go on, well, the story tries to involve him, like Enoch the character. And if I could teach anything in this video, is that silent protagonists work in a story where they don't matter that much, or the silence has a purpose.
Or else you get plot points where, well, they stopped making sense at the moment when the character could talk. Not talking makes little sense. I really like this game, and I'm gonna review it someday. But when that moment happens, it's like, are you idiots or something?
And well, the problem is Enoch is just there. He doesn't do anything or say anything. He barely even emotes to anything around him. I mean, there's another character called Nana, but they never actually talk to one another, and they get together by the end. Oh, yeah, right. I'll explain a lot of stuff at the end. I'm sorry about that because of how the plot is. It's kinda bizarre. Just note it makes sense when I'm telling you this, and note it's weird because, again, they never share one word with each other, and it's really bizarre. And this really causes issues with the story, as it doesn't really help develop Enoch, or even much of the other Grigori. I mean, for God's sakes, one of them is friends with him, which is bizarre as Enoch never elaborates on this relationship they have. Hell, I learn about the Grigori more in the manga than the game itself. Yes, there are actually 2 mangas, and yes, it is interesting and actually explains their fall in better detail than the game. There's actually one scene in the game where I can usually point at to explain a lot of problems with this story, and it's not the Fire Nephilim one. I'll get to that in a moment, trust me. It's actually the scene where after Nana falls to darkness for some reason. Look, I don't even know what the heck the darkness is. Don't ask me. As Belial's doing this to get Enoch into his darkness, again, he's never explained in-game, and after Amoros rescues him, he somehow gets infected with the vileness and he becomes indecisive, and it's really bizarre as it's never shown in-game how that vileness works or why is he even like this to begin with, since they never even bother to show him ever indecisive to begin with. And mind you, this affects the gameplay too, as after that moment, the gameplay and progress just stop. Just entirely stops. When it should have made the point and moved on already.
And while I'm talking about the pace, I might as well just talk about the gameplay, since it's okay? Just okay?
The gameplay is very minimalistic, as the game actually only has 4 buttons to play with. That being the jump, the attack, the guard, and the purify button. It's actually handled very well. Hell, the camera stick is not even used in-game. Which you would think that would be a nightmare to handle because, you know, a lot of games actually do not handle this well at times. But it's actually handled fine, which is pretty good because, again, I can name a lot of examples. There is some minor depth in the combat. For example, while guarding, you can actually press an attack button to do a different attack, or just holding the attack to do another attack. Heck, you can guard break with a pause combo, which I never did except in the beginning since, well, there was a pause between my recording sessions and I totally forgot. But I never needed it since combat is really easy. Yeah, I died, but that doesn't make it challenging since I can just reset every time. And with a lot of safe spots, there's not a lot of issues to begin with. But throughout the game, you'll not be just using your bare fist. You'll also have access to free weapons. That being an arc, a fast slashing weapon, the Gale, the projectile weapon, which I don't know why, but I love. Maybe it's because I love those weapons where you just flick your hand and an attack just happens. I don't know, it's just fun. And finally, the Veil, which I use the most in the endgame since it deals the most damage out of all weapons, which again, only 3 of them. Plus also alternates as a shield, so it basically was very useful for surviving boss attacks. I honestly can't tell if they're easy or that because I learned the patterns they're easier to me. I mean, like, the game also has a triangle power system with the weapons, which is kind of never important and only important for the final boss, which I'll get to that in a moment. The only reason why you would ever switch weapons is because one enemy will actually be stronger against another weapon while the other one will be weaker to it, and it's really bizarre. Which is again strange of why the game makes the final boss impervious to every weapon except for one is still baffling to me. And really, once you notice it, the game's problems become really apparent, as gameplay just repeats. Granted, you'll be looking at different enemies, but not really their gameplay really. Which, by the end, you're just wondering why they even bother making so many different enemies when they all play the same.
Heck, there was a boost mechanic with Uriel, who I didn't even mention because, I mean, it's useful, but talking about it in any other sense than it's just a boost mechanic, it's just wasting your time and mine. And also you could apparently upgrade it, but it's not really ever actually explained.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of platforming in the game too, which is not bad in any sense, but I also find platformers to be a boring genre. I can't really explain why, it's just a me thing. I want to repeat that these sections aren't bad, well, except one, that being the weird thing the game does. Okay, throughout the game you will find the remnants of Ishtar. No, not her. I'll get to that again, it's weird. Trust me, it's very weird. The game will have her bones scattered around in this one level, and we gotta collect them, and it's also a platforming challenge. Honestly, I wouldn't even have a problem with these if the game didn't make them annoying to fail at. Okay, if you fail at these, you have to suffer from an awfully long cutscene that doesn't mean anything, and we just get spit back to the menu after just wasting a minute of our lives. What the heck? Honestly, that's pretty much the gameplay. It's very repetitive and doesn't really do that much. Well, except there's one place that I haven't talked about yet, and I think it's actually the one place that I think everyone agrees is just awesome. The motorcycle gameplay. Cause holy shit, it was the fresh air the game needed, like good lord, it was legit awesome. It kinda makes me wonder why they put it here to begin with, because it's so out of place with the rest of the game. Though I must say, I need to add this part in, because it's something I just need to put in.
Cool guys don't look at explosions. They blow things up and then walk away.
Honestly, we just needed card games on motorcycles. And I would have told you 10 out of 10.
Oh yeah, the music for this stage, also just awesome. Actually, speaking on the music, it's good. Well, to actually be more frank, it's alright, bland a bit. It all sounds so similar that I legitimately could not tell if one song was beginning or another song. It kind of all blends together, because they tried to make it all grandiose, when some more summer music would have been nice. To actually go back to the bosses again, god, the motorcycle one had the best boss because it had a lot of different forms and different powers. And it's kind of bizarre when we actually go to other fights, like the Grigori. Which is actually kind of bizarre since, remember how I said there were 7 fallen angels? Well, you only ever get to see 4 and, well, I'll explain a bit more for later, but the others weren't put to good use. I mean, you barely learn anything about them and all their bosses are pretty much the same. Well, I mean all their bosses, I mean their first form. Their true form is actually quite interesting and allows for a lot of different fights. It just feels like that should have been their fighting form to begin with, if you catch my drift. Honestly, the game boss fights were pretty much the better part of the game. I actually really did like the Fire Nephilim boss, as it looked cool and allowed for a lot of different fights. Actually, I haven't gone back to explaining the plot, so let's get back to explaining the plot and the hell are the Nephilim? Well, the Nephilim are a being that are just basically the child of an angel and I'm human. And well, God doesn't like them. Why he does it is beyond me, and why the heck he made them to be in agonizing pain is also confusing. Yeah, under their cute faces, they're in constant pain. And also devour each other because they want to fill the hole that is God loving them. Well, except these two, for some reason, I don't know why. Strangely enough, the game calls them the root of all evil, which makes no sense when it wasn't even their fault or choice to be born and aren't loved by God. Hell, the Nephilim aren't even evil. They just want to play around until they became monsters, which is again, kinda not their choice. Hell, the Fire Nephilim wasn't even an issue until it ate Barakel, which is also weird because it also ate us. But somehow we got help with Enoch's future kid and unlocked the Sieta, which kinda killed it. But also we'll never see those two ever again in the story again. Well, not here, but again, just trust me on this. I'm not making shit up. I'll explain them in a bit. Actually, thinking about it more, the Grigori weren't even doing anything to anyone outside of God's people and just took the people who agreed with them and allowed them to be with them. I mean, Serial's people did like him and well, he did fight for them with his love. Lucifer states that they don't understand love, which I don't get as there's no evidence to that. In fact, Armorel seems to get it as he selflessly saves Enoch even though he knew they would still be enemies by the end. The problem is the game never shows why they are a problem. Only that they're corrupting people, which is never shown in game. And only the enemies actually fight you, but then again, you are kind of the baddie here trying to destroy their happiness. And also, your side's planning to flood the world, so... Which is also bizarre because, you know, he floods the world anyway later on. Still. And that's not to excuse the rigory of some of their shit. I mean, like, they did steal from the big man himself, which is kind of fucked up anyway. But also keeping the people here who don't want to be here and just want out, but aren't allowed for some reason. Why, I don't get it. Some will say there's some evidence to show why they didn't do this, but it's so stupid I don't get it. Though it does beg a big question that I do want to ask. Why doesn't God do anything? You see, in the manga, they make it a point that he is all-powerful and all-seeing, so by admission, he is allowing this all to happen. And in fact, makes Lucifer not do anything with the proxy of Enoch. And in the game, he does nothing. He only talks to Lucifer, who's only getting orders from him, and is actually asking about the progress, which is just kind of weird. But in the end, it still kind of makes our side, like, actually kind of fucking evil. Who was again just wanting to flood the world until Enoch kind of just said, hey, let's not do that, cause dick move, bruh.
Heck, I'm only harping on the story so much is because it doesn't really want to talk about its subject matter in any real depth. Just troll on along without really much of anything happening. Huh, what am I owning this for? We're gonna do that next, promise.
So Enoch has pretty much destroyed everyone, except Erikel, who's never seen in the game, which is weird. And finally we reach Semyaza, who's at the top of the tower. And when you reach him, well, he's in this pyramid and he's not there. It was actually his life support system. Sort of, again, in a moment, it's complicated. Everyone is really confused. Lucifer surmises that the fall actually killed him, but that's not how it happened in the manga, and as shown in later, we'll get to that, trust me. So anyway, Lucifer takes Ishtar and teleports them out, leaving Enoch to handle the tower. And let's just explain Ishtar now, cause if you're wondering what the heck's her deal, I don't know particularly either. I think they were kind of playing with the mixed background of their mythology, since they do share stories of, like, the flood and stuff. I mean, heck, Gilgamesh is in the manga too. And yes, I do consider him a Geo reference, thus filling my JoJo reference of the day. Anyway, the game does end with the destruction of the tower and peace being restored. Yeah, about that.
Honestly, I originally wasn't even going to talk about this, but I found out about it, and well, I only want to talk about it since it actually makes some plot points make sense, but also makes little sense, and it actually shows what the heck the developers were even planning on originally. And honestly, it's quite interesting.
There is a lot to explain here, so I'll try my best to keep everything simple, but it's not that easy. The best way I could explain everything is that a lot happened. Basically, after Enoch is left alone, we actually find out that Semyaza is still alive. How? He actually became one with the tower. It's complicated. He also is in cahoots with Belial, this guy here, who was in the game earlier, but so little of a role that I could legit ignore him, and you really lose nothing of the plot. We'll get to more on him in a moment, just trust me on this, we're gonna talk about him. But that's beside the point, as now they actually join forces and try to kick Enoch's ass. While this is happening, Lucifer is watching this all, as he's not trying to help Enoch that much, other than the normal role of resetting time so that Enoch can, get better at the situation. It's only until Methuselah comes around, yeah, this thing, comes around and stops him from doing that. Afterwards, Enoch unlocks a power called matter manipulation. How he got this and how does he unlock this is never really explained or explored, but he basically defeats Semyaza and, well, seals away Belial again, thus actually sealing the tower and actually saving the day. This is where it gets complicated. Okay, the book is actually, again, mostly through the spotlight of, well, Lucifer, who's actually been handling some fallen angels from time to time. And now, God basically then tells Lucifer to go to Enoch, which Enoch actually gets a drink from God, basically telling him to handle the fallen angel. This actually breaks him in a sense, well, Lucifer, because basically he's God's right-hand man. He didn't like the idea of, he doesn't like the idea of his work being pushed to someone else when it's his job. He's actually not mad at Enoch, more just God himself, because he would just do that simple betrayal to him. And somehow he convinces Enoch to work with him to take down God, which is some weird aspect. It's complicated. Lucifer also has this dream about a girl who's so unimportant that I barely mention her, but the book mentions her a lot. Anyway, during the war, they basically unlock the other fallen angels and just try to defeat God. Well, actually, at the end, this is where it gets really complicated, and it's actually where the Metatron comes in. Yeah, that thing. The ascension of the Metatron. This is where it gets really bizarre. And I'm just saying, really bizarre. Like Japan bizarre. Oh, wait. A lot of things happen, but it doesn't really matter. But anyway, Enoch defeats the Archangel Michael. And this is where a weird thing comes up, and I have to explain a lot of things now. So God talks to Enoch now, through his head now. I don't know how that worked, but anyway. He basically explains how the universe became to be. Basically, there was a world called Julia. He basically said, nah, it didn't work. Then God creates two other worlds called Sita and Ruta. Basically, he decided to make Sita the basis of the world, which Belial didn't like, which is Ruta. It's complicated, it's stupid, I don't get it. Then, he just made the new world, which also carried Ishtar's soul into this world, which is complicated, and trust me, I've already had a headache already. And finally, we get mention of the Metatron. Basically, it's actually more of an event where basically the two powers of Sita and Ruta kind of face each other in an equal battle, which kind of creates a new Big Bang. That's the best way I've been explained to it. Lucifer has actually been explaining the story to Belial, and he's been asking for his power, which he does, and after that, basically Enoch and Lucifer fight, but it doesn't work, I think? I'm not entirely sure. The book kind of doesn't really explain what exactly happened. But the book ends with our hollowed out Lucifer, like a rejected Taito Kubo hollow design, which I'm kind of sad we never did get. Anyway, he has one final talk with God and talking about what he's gonna plan on doing in the next world. And that's how the book ends. It's really bizarre.
And that's how El Shaddai ends. Not with a whimper, not with a bang. But the whispers of a dream yet to be had. I feel like I got a few things wrong, but that's what I got. I'm still entirely unsure about everything I just said. But at the end of the day, can I really, truly recommend El Shaddai? Yes and no. As an experience, yes. It's something that I really do think you want to try out. But you just have to come in here with a few things in mind. The gameplay has some interesting ideas, but the gameplay is not fully sufficient enough to last that long. It looks great, but that feels like all you're getting. The music is alright, but you can listen to better. And the story is not something good I would recommend someone to actively go out and try to figure out. But it was still an interesting time nevertheless. In fact, the original reason why I really wanted to make this review was because I felt that the HD remaster should have fixed at least some issues. But it didn't. But it at least made me hopeful for when the next game happens. Or whatever game they make next. Because I'm hopeful. That's really all you can be. Next time, I kinda already spoiled it, but I'll leave you with this.
Welcome to the Cathedral of Shadows, where